Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord.
So we imagine that we are all
Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. I am found, I am yours, I am loved,
pray for clarity that we need, the guidance that we need in order to know how we can best serve our brothers and sisters in this world at this time. Praying for healing. Praying for unity. There's been so much divisiveness. We send our prayers out to the world with a feeling of knowing that we are here to rise up to the occasion, to pray harder, rise higher, forgive steadily, love readily, the best that we can do under all circumstances, as we pray and as we move in a prayerful spirit into our lives, into our everyday lives. Whether we're home or whether we're out in the world working, we are all essential. Everything that we do is essential this time because we're here to be the instruments of peace, the expression of love. And for those of us who meet on Thursday night, we do that through our dedication to a spiritual path, and our path of awakening is A Course in Miracles. So a few days ago, I did A Course in Miracles 101 on Monday. It was Monday, and it was basically just a very simple overview of what A Course in Miracles is. And it was specifically for people who are new to A Course in Miracles. And so we had some questions. And when I signed off, it turned out that there was one question that I had not addressed. And it turns out that it's a very important question. In fact, I'm going to spend most of today addressing that question. And the question was about awakening. And what does A Course in Miracles say about awakening? So I want to mention and remind you that A Course in Miracles was started in 1965, and it's a modern day spiritual classic already, but it was at a time when that particular phrase wasn't used as much as it is now. The phrase that was used most was, and at least in A Course in Miracles, was unity, unifying, atonement, salvation. Those were more the terminology that was being used in A Course in Miracles. But all of those words are still limited. Our language is limited. No matter what words we use, we are limited in terms of being able to actually express the experience of awakening. So awakening in A Course in Miracles is very specifically addressed in the introduction, the very introduction of the Course text. So I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to remind you of how important this is. This is in the very beginning, right when you get past the preface, when you get right into the introduction of the text. It says, "This is A Course in Miracles. It is a required course." Now, the funny thing about that is that it doesn't mean that A Course in Miracles is the only required course. It means that the spiritual path is a required course. The way to God is required. Everything else can wait. Your path to God is the most essential thing that you can do for your spirit. So it says, the course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. So awakening, according to the Course, is awareness, the awareness of who we truly are, who everyone else truly is. Because the truth of the matter is that has always been. We're not learning something new, we're remembering something that has always been. And that is why this practice is repetitive over and over and over, because the path to awakening, the path to remembering who you are, that you're not an ego-laden, judgmental victim of your emotions, but that you are truly a spiritual being, and that you're here to rise to the occasion of doing spiritual work. And so when we talk about awakening, we're talking about remembering and going to the truth of who we are, the essence of our spirit. And so it repeats itself. We are currently in a period of repetition, and that's why the lessons are reviews. They are reminding us what it was we learned earlier in the lessons, And it's telling us to review them because we need to constantly, continuously be in a state of remembering so that we stay awake. So in terms of awakening and repeating the lessons and living our lives according to Course in Miracles, the idea is to find a way to incorporate a sense of remembering on a daily basis. So it's kind of like the ego is the snooze button, right? When you wake up in the morning and you're a little bit tired and you don't want to get up, you hit the snooze button after the alarm went off, right? The snooze button lets you go back to sleep. It's like our ego is telling us on a daily basis, oh, you don't have to remember who you are, go back to sleep. The part of you that is sleeping and unaware is the part that's reactive and upset and jealous or angry or whatever it is, even self-loathing. All of those things are the awakened self. A Course in Miracles or any spiritual dedication is the alarm clock. It's waking us up. It's waking us up to the work that needs to be done, the work that needs to be incorporated into who we are, so that as you're living your life, as you're going through your day, you can have that as the alarm that is reminding you, as a prompt when something comes up, when you get agitated with yourself or with other people. You can remember who you are. Remember. Awake. Wake up. Don't go back to sleep. Don't hit the snooze button. When you hit the snooze button, you're interacting with the ego, with the subconscious programming. So awakening is a process. You don't wake up and then suddenly never snooze again. It could be a daily process. It could be an hourly process to reawaken, to continue the process of awakening. So I received a letter from Barbara Janetta, who's our dear loved one who had to go to Canada. She's a snowbird. She's with us when she's in the area. And she wrote me a letter. Now, a lot of you guys write to me or send me texts after our gathering, and they're all very kind and sweet, and they humble me deeply. I usually don't read them because I just don't want to be reading all the nice things you said about me, because it's really about all of us, you know. I mean, keep sending me those letters, but it's about all of us. It's about the energy of us together is what we actually are creating here. I couldn't do this without you. This letter was particularly important because it speaks to the repetition that's necessary for awakening. So Barbara, I hope you're with us tonight. I don't know if you are, but if you are, thank you for this letter. She starts out by saying, this is how she starts her letters, which I think, you know, this is so nice. We should all address people so wonderfully and so filled with love. She says, "Dearest gem of light and love." How can you not love that? She said, "I resonated with your suggestion of making a mantra out of the lessons." Remember last week I was saying, when you're doing the lessons and you're going over and over the reviews, to choose one that you can use as sort of like a mantra through the day. So, you know, something is upsetting and you say, I can see peace instead of this. I can see peace instead of this. So it becomes a mantra for you to redirect your mind. So it says, I went for a 2-mile walk, and instead of letting my thoughts stray into possible egoic territory, I chose to embrace this mantra. And the mantra is, I am light and love and peace. She did it with each step. So it's right foot, right foot, left foot. I step and light step and love and peace and joy. So each step was part of the mantra. I am light and love and peace and joy. And monitoring your mind and where it goes. She said, I started to notice that the powerful words were being said when my prominent foot touched the earth. Then halfway through the walk, I was gifted with these words that made me chuckle. Well done. That's putting your best foot forward. I think that to some, me being one, sometimes feel like our lesson repetitions are not really doing anything profound, but you reminded us that as often as we saturate our minds with truth, the way to love will be found quicker and quicker. The way to love she said, we saturate our minds with truth and the way to love will be found quicker and quicker. So awakening, awareness, you know, sometimes you don't even realize how your mind has just gone off into, you know, dark areas, unhappy memories, and then suddenly you're you know, remembering something that happened and you're rehearsing a conversation you wish you would have had and things you wish you would have said, and or things that were said, and it's like, stop yourself, the end, put an end to it, stop it, and pray instead. Do a step and a prayer and a word. I am peace. I can see peace instead of this, or whatever the prayer is for that day, whatever the lesson is for that day. These are the prompts. These are the steps that allow us to awaken. In Course in Miracles, they call it a holy instant. When you have that memory, that remembering, that there's another way, that's a holy instant. You can stop yourself. You can stop. You have this discipline. You have this ability within you to do this, to go from whatever is taking your mind out of a holy place and turn it around and decide to do something differently. So initially it may not feel natural, but what happens is, as Barbara was saying, that you saturate your mind and you don't give it the opportunity to remember what you were mad about with fulano. Fulano is how we say, what's his name in Spanish? It's like, you know, like whoever that was, whatever that situation was. Sometimes you just get stuck. You know, it's like your mind is in a loop of agitation or aggravation, and you can feed it a new loop. Give it a different loop. Give it a holy loop. Give it a loop from your higher holy self. So this was really a reminder of how important it is to keep ourselves disciplined in the area of awakening. So we are focusing our minds, we're focusing on the teachings, and the teachings are reminding us that we have the option of choosing a judgment or decision. We have the option of choosing an upset or compassion. These are always our options. We're always at these crossroads, and we get to choose. And so we can remember that we have forgotten who we really are, that our previous learnings that came from a lifetime of messages need to be dismantled, need to be forgotten. Those are the things we need to forget. All the negative messages you give yourself, all the judgments. Those are the things we want to let go. And I'm never quite comfortable with saying let go, because like, well, how do you do that? Well, we let it be. Let's use that instead. We let it be what it is. It's like a parent dealing with an agitated child. We can gently just let it be, and then use substitution with our prayers, our course lesson. The course lessons never end. 365 of them, and you can start all over, or you can just choose the ones that you think are the most beneficial to you. So before the ego, we had a true sense of ourselves. Before the ego, there was complete unity. There was a time in the Christian Judeo traditions. There's talk about Adam falling asleep, but in the Judeo-Christian traditions, there's no talk about Adam waking up. So before the ego, there was complete oneness. The ego came, we fell asleep, our consciousness fell asleep, and now we're waking up by remembering the truth of who we are. So we are inheriting Adam's sleepiness. And so when we get really dedicated to a spiritual path, we start to wake up. And in the waking, we feel peace. In the awakening up, we start realizing that we can see things differently, we can speak differently, we can love differently. We can love from a place of pure, holy relationships. So a few things came to my attention this week as I was thinking about this. Jesus Calling, which is that book I've been referring to every now and then, had on April 25th, it said, "Make me your focal point as you move through this day, just as a spinning ballerina must keep returning her eyes to a given point to maintain her balance, so must you keep returning your focus to me." So returning our focus to our spiritual path, our sense of whatever or whoever your God is, whoever you call your God. In this case, we're saying the Course in Miracles, we're saying Holy Spirit, we're saying God, we're saying Jesus. These are words that we use interactively. Some people use other words. Some people, we're in the middle of Ramadan. Actually, we're in the beginning of Ramadan right now. So the people who would be praying would say Allah. There's many names of God. There's many ways to call out to God. The important thing is to call out to God, to return our focus to our spiritual path, to return our focus, like the spinning ballerina, right? The way the ballerina doesn't get dizzy is by keeping her focus on her pointed path. She knows where she needs to keep her focus so she doesn't lose her balance. We're always trying to find balance on the spiritual path. That's what our life is all about, finding balance. So the thing about that was that when I was thinking about the balance of the spinning ballerina, I came across something else which had to do with a spinning dancer. Have any of you seen this, the spinning dancer illusion? It is the idea that these characters that you see are spinning, right? There's 3 women, and they're spinning. So if you look at the ballerina on the left, it looks like she's spinning to the left. But if you switch your eyes, suddenly they all look like they're spinning. And it's like, what is going on? What is that all about? How does that happen? So of course I had to investigate it, and it's called something that I couldn't memorize. Kinetic bistable optic illusion. And what that means is that there's a psychological and a physiological aspect to what's going on in our minds as we're watching the spinning. Well, what does that tell us? That tells us that it's up to us. It even says in the scientific analysis of what's going on is that we have to determine what's going on based on our perception of what we see. And that's exactly what A Course in Miracles tells us. We are continuously, constantly making ideas, judgments, and determinations based on what we see and what we think of what we see. And so much of what we see is based on our previous learning. So to come back to a focus of spiritual awakening is to continuously saturate our minds with that which allows us to stay awake and to continue on our spiritual path. And it may be difficult at times when you're scared. And it's exactly the time when you need to step it up, especially right now. Pandemic out there, what's going on in here? Now, I keep referring to this time as spiritual incubation because it's a time when we really truly become so dedicated to our own spiritual growth and our own spiritual path. And that's what we've been doing all week is doing our reviews. Earlier today, I sent you guys this video that because it's the 5th Thursday, we would have been watching movies, and I had picked out some videos. And one of the videos that I sent out today, for those of you who are on my daily text groups, I sent out a video on Anita Moorjani when she did her TED Talk about her experience of dying and coming back to life. And she talked, it's a great video. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up, or if you haven't watched it, if I send it to you, you should watch it. It's only 18 minutes, but it's a wonderful story about her experience with, her near-death experience with understanding what it's like to die and to come back. But she gave this great metaphor where she was saying that if you went into a large, dark warehouse, and all you had was a little flashlight with a pinpoint light around the warehouse, you would have very limited understanding of what is in the warehouse. But if suddenly somebody turned on the overhead floodlights, you would see everything. And you'd be like, whoa, it's so much more than I ever knew was in here. And that's sort of like our physical lives versus our spiritual lives. Most of our life, we're looking at people and situations through just that one little pinprick of light. We're just seeing one little aspect, And then we're making these judgments and we're having determinations based on that one little thing that we can see, because we can't see the whole picture. So A Course in Miracles, any dedicated spiritual path is telling us that there is a bigger picture, and we just have to believe in it. We have to know it. We have to move in the direction of it, even if all we can see is that little pinprick of light. Because we know that sooner or later we're going to see the entire vision. So waking up while we're in this body is the opportunity to see glimpses of that. Maybe when you're meditating, or maybe when you're listening to a beautiful piece of music, there's a moment where you really get it, that you're so truly connected. And suddenly you feel wide awake. And you feel full of peace and full of love. That's what it is to be awake. That's what the process of awakening is. Any questions? No questions? Okay. Okay, so the other thing she said was, and I thought this was kind of interesting, she said there was a big group of people, and she told everybody, okay, everybody, close your eyes first she said, look around the room and see what's in the room that's red. Then close your eyes and try to remember everything you've seen. So she waits a few seconds. Then she says, okay, open your eyes. And then she said, what did you see that was blue? And everybody starts laughing because they weren't looking for anything blue. They were looking for the red things. And that was another point she was making, that, sometimes we get so focused on something that we don't see what else is there. And so when we are on this spiritual path, our main focus is our connection to spirit. That's our main focus, because everything else is not within our realm of understanding. There's a line in A Course in Miracles that says, I don't know what anything is for. And the truth of the matter is, there's very little that we truly understand in this world. And so, as long as we're not in a place of completely understanding, we shouldn't be thinking that we know what everything is for. Now, I don't use the word should or shouldn't very often because it sounds a little bit judgmental. I think there's only like once or twice that the Course in Miracles even says it. It's a very gentle course. It wants us to be gentle with ourselves. It wants us to be gentle with the process of awakening. And yet, we still need to know that we are not in charge. They say we all want to serve God, but most of us want to serve as his advisor, right? We want what we want. So in order to find peace, we have to just be okay with what is. It's a very Taoist perspective, to just be okay with what is. And if we can affect change in some way, if there's harm that's being done in the world, if there's harm that's being done to you, you find a way to address it without meeting violence with violence, without meeting unkind words with even more unkind words. We are learning to raise our consciousness and to focus on that which is ultimately going to bring more light into the world. And we're moving into an area of a course where we start focusing on forgiveness. So that next week I'm going to give you all the lessons that focus on forgiveness, and we're going to start talking every year. We do our forgiveness lessons, and we're moving right into them. We're going to be talking about them in a minute. We just finished our series of reviews. So I'd like to do a few of these. I'm going to ask Rusty to represent you, right? He's going to be your representation of all of you, because we're going to do some praying together. So wherever you are, put your hand on your heart. We're going to do some of our reviews, because I want you to remember who you are. And these reviews are your opportunity to remember who you are. Each review this past week has been so beautiful, because it is not just the review of the lesson, but it's a prayer as well. So I'm going to start with 114, and I'm going to go to 120. So 114 says, I am spirit. You put your hand on your heart, and you're going to repeat after me. I am the Son of God.
I am the Son of God.
Nobody can contain my spirit.
Nobody can contain my spirit,
Nor impose on me a limitation
nor impose on me a limitation
that God did not create.
that God did not create.
Deep breath. Second one, I will accept my part in God's plan for salvation. Remember how important this is to remember that you are an essential worker, right? Whether there's a pandemic or whether you have a job, you are an essential worker when it comes to God's plan for salvation. So repeat after me. What can my function be?
What can my function be?
But to accept the word of God.
But to accept the word of God.
For he has created me as I am,
For he has created me as I am,
and as I forever will be.
and as I forever will be.
I know that you're all praying with us, with Rusty and I. And salvation is my only function. So what it's saying here is that every day my function as an essential worker is simply to bring my light into the world, your light into the world with whomever you come in contact with. That is how you become an essential worker, by being that which brings salvation to the world. Okay, so here we go. Everybody, hand on your heart, deep breath. My function is to forgive.
My function is to forgive,
And to forgive myself for errors I have made.
and to forgive myself for errors I have made.
For thus I am released.
For thus I am released.
The next one is, my part is essential to God's plan for salvation. And remember this, I am essential to the plan of God.
I am essential to the plan of God.
For the salvation of the world.
For the salvation of the world.
He gave me this plan.
He gave me this plan.
That I might save the world.
That I might save the world.
And once again, it sounds like, whoa, that's a tall order. How can I possibly be so arrogant to think that I can save the world? But the world is where you are, right? Right now, my world is Rusty and you. That's my whole world right now. And if I can do something, or if you can do something that assists someone else to finding peace, then you have saved their world. You have been a savior in that moment. Okay, next one. Hand on your heart, deep breath. God's will for me is perfect happiness.
God's will for me is perfect happiness.
How can I believe that there is another will for me?
How can I believe that there is another will for me?
I share God's will for happiness for me.
I share God's will for happiness for me.
What he has given me is all that I want.
What he has given me is all that I want.
So we want to remember that when we say, my will is God's will, it's because God's will for you and for me is happiness, is to be happy. So we often hear people say, oh, that was God's will. When we think of things in the world that occur, A Course in Miracles sort of steps out of the usual dogma that says that's God's will. So that's a little bit hard for some people to accept, because what the Course is saying is that's not God's will. God's will for you is happiness. That's it. So things happen. All kinds of things happen. Very sad things happen. And yet, as we continue in our bodies in this lifetime, we still have to find our peace through those things, because we're not seeing the bigger picture. Remember, we're just walking through the world with a little flashlight. We don't have the floodlight. So regardless of the heartache, the tragedy, whatever it is that's going on that we're involved in, we have to remember that we're in it for a reason, and we have to find peace. We have to find peace within ourselves. They say when people die, rest in peace. I always say we're the ones who have to rest in peace. We're the ones who have to find peace with whatever is going on with our lives and with circumstances outside of our control. So that takes us to the next one. God's peace and joy are mine. It's interesting, I said mind, but it's mine. God's peace and joy are mine. Today I will accept God's peace and joy in glad exchange for all the substitutes that I made for happiness and peace. This is an important lesson, because we're always making up substitutes for God's will. Our substitutes are the things that we think are going to bring us happiness, those temporary things. And we can manifest, we can have lots of nice things, we can have fun, we have a good life, and that life will also have other things happen. Things are temporary. Sometimes things happen, and we want to be able to find a way to accept that ultimately there's the peace and the joy that we can find within ourselves. And how do we do that? We do that by continuously being on this path and doing our spiritual practice. Let me be still and listen to the truth. Let my own feeble voice be stilled, and let me hear the mighty voice for truth. That's a practice also, right? It's a practice to lower the voice of the ego. Oh, it's constant chatter. In Spanish we say witty witty. It's just witty witty, constantly going. And it's up to us to find that time of stillness and of quiet, meditative time, prayerful time, where we can truly get in touch with this voice that says, you are my beloved. You are my beloved. And to move into the world with a peaceful heart, with a loving heart. Any questions? No questions? Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going into a new section, and this is a really important section. I think they're all important sections. I don't even know why I say that. There's 365 really good lessons. We're going to be soon in the middle of the year, right in the middle of the year. So we're going to step up our practices. And as of tomorrow, we're moving out of review and into new lessons. And the first one is lesson 121. This is for tomorrow, May 1st. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Here is the answer to your search for peace. Here is the key to meaning in a world that seems to make no sense. Here is the way to safety in apparent danger that appears to threaten you at every turn and bring uncertainty to all your hopes of ever finding quietness and peace. Here are all questions answered. Here is the end of all uncertainty ensured at last. So let's talk about that paragraph for a second. There was a guy who was doing these studies on the brain, and he went on this very expensive excursion to a retreat center, and they did all brain scans and put electrodes on his brain, and they did different type of meditative techniques. And when they did techniques that were focused on forgiveness, he found the most peace. And so he came to the conclusion that peace, focusing on peace, is a way focusing on forgiveness is a way to peace. And I thought, wow, that sounded like a lot of money and a lot of time invested to get a scientific confirmation. So now we have scientific confirmation. But guess what? The ancients have known this from the beginning of time. Jesus was probably the first quantum physicist to ever exist because he had the forgiveness formula from the very beginning, as he was dying, as he went through life, after life, now in the 60s, now in the year 2020, we have the same exact formula. It has never changed. Focus on forgiveness. Focus on the forgiveness of what you see. Focus on the forgiveness of your perception of what you see. And focus on forgiveness of yourself. Because forgiveness is the key to happiness. It's the magic eraser. So, it says, the unforgiving mind is full of fear and offers love no room to be itself. No place where it can spread its wings in peace and soar above the turmoil of the world. I had an acquaintance recently, and I say acquaintance because it's not a close relationship, but it was somebody who was telling stories about a breakup story. Was telling her breakup story, and it turned out that the breakup was almost 5 years previous, but the stories were being told like it was so fresh, and the anger in the voice while telling the story. And I remember thinking that that's a long time to be that mad. And the stories to me, I mean, we all have our own interpretations of things. The stories to me were not horrible. They weren't horrible stories. They weren't the kinds of things where you'd be like, oh my God, that was so terrible. But it was something to hold on to. And I started thinking, like, do I have that? Do I have that somewhere? Is there something I can think of where it's not over? I can still bring up the upset. And maybe we all do. Maybe we all have something where you realize, you know what, I'm not done with that. I can still bring up some upset around that. That is a prompt. That is a great opportunity to take that to your forgiveness practices. And there might be a part of you that says, but no, if I forgive it, then that means it's okay. No, that's not what it's saying. What it's saying is if you forgive it, you find peace. And so forgiveness of yourself is also very important because you might be carrying some old guilt and shame about things. The Course in Miracles says in the CE edition that you are needed. Because you're an essential worker, right? An essential worker means you are needed to do the work. And if you're going to see yourself as bad and sinful and dirty and cloudy and not at all the kind of person that could do this work, then you won't. Then you just won't, because you won't be able to see yourself the way you are seen by the divine. And I love the idea that whenever you're really being hard on yourself, go to God for a second opinion, because I guarantee you God's going to say something about loving you, about how beloved you are, how essential you are. Please forgive yourself so that you can do the work, you can do what is necessary in this world. So, still on lesson 121 down to paragraph 6. It says, forgiveness is acquired, right? We are all practicing forgiveness. It is not inherent in the mind because your mind is filled with the ego's dictates. Your mind is filled with self-condemnation and judgment. Remember, we've been talking about awareness and perception all through this time together. And so we're raising our awareness about those things that cause us to go into a place of judgment and fear and anything that's lacking in love or compassion. It says, sin is an idea you taught yourself. Forgiveness must be learned by you as well. We taught ourselves that we've made these horrendous mistakes and that they're unforgivable. And so if there's something that you're holding on to against somebody else, then there's probably a part of you that is holding something against yourself as well. So the great thing about being on a path of awakening, it is a path of awareness. You're raising your awareness. You're raising your ability to see clearly what it is that is truly within you. And then expressing love through that. The expression of love is the miracle. Changing your mind and then expressing love. That's the miracle. That is an opportunity for you to just feel your heart opening and stretching out to accommodate even more love, more compassion. If you ask the Dalai Lama anything, his answer is going to be compassion. Always. Anything about any kind of wrongdoing, his answer is always compassion. Compassion for yourself, compassion for others. Course in Miracles is telling us that the answer is forgiveness. Why? Forgiveness takes us to compassion. Compassion takes us to love, self-love, and love for others. Awakening, that's what we're doing. We are waking up. We are waking up. So it says here that there's what I like about 121 is there's an actual practice built into it. It says, if you are willing, you can learn to take the key to happiness and use it on your own behalf. And what is that? That's forgiveness. So it says, think of someone you don't like, who seems to irritate you, or to cause regret in you if you should meet them. One you may even actively despise, or merely try to overlook. It does not matter what the form your anger takes. And then it says, you've probably chosen that person already, right? So like, he's got our number. Like as soon as it tells you to start thinking about somebody you don't like, you know who that is, right? You immediately. And he's like, I know you know who that is. I know you've already thought of that person. And then he says, he'll do. This is funny. I feel like Jesus got a good sense of humor. Like he's like my buddy. And then it says, now close your eyes and see this person in your mind and look at him a while. Try to perceive some light in him, even if it's just a little gleam that you never noticed before. Try to find some little spark of brightness shining through the ugly picture that you had of him. Look at this picture now till you see a light somewhere within. Then let this light extend until it covers him completely and makes that picture beautiful and good. Now look at this changed perception and turn your mind to one you can now call friend. Transfer the light that you see until you see your former enemy as your friend. Perceive him more than a friend, for that light is his holiness, and it shows you that you are each other's saviors. Saved, saving, healed, and whole. Let him offer you the light you see in him. He was your enemy and now a friend, united in blessing you with what you gave. See, you gave love and light. You are now receiving love and light. Now you are one with him and he with you. Now have you been forgiven by yourself. Do not forget throughout the day the role forgiveness plays in bringing happiness to every unforgiving mind, with yours among them. And here's the prayer. It says, forgiveness is the key to happiness. I will awaken, there's the word again, I will awaken from the dream that I am mortal, fallible, and full of sin, until I know that I am the perfect child of God. Amen to that. So that's it for tonight, unless we have questions. Any questions? Okay, you guys, we're going to end. I want to talk a little bit about Ramadan before we end. I mentioned it earlier. We're in the season of Ramadan. Ramadan is the Islamic period of dedication, of deep inner reflection. They do a lot of fasting, offering of prayers. The idea of any inner reflection is to see what needs to be purified. And during this purification process, it's considered to be scorching heat. That's what Ramadan actually means, scorching heat. A time of deep reflection where you go so deep within yourself that you are willing to just burn away anything that is not for your highest good. And so we're going to play a song for you that's really very beautiful. In the Sufi tradition, now Sufism is the mystical aspect of Islam. And one of the things that both Islam and Sufis do is they concentrate on what they call the names of God, which are actually qualities. The qualities of God are how to reach God. Because in Judaism, in Judaism you don't even spell out the word God. It's like G-D. And there's a lot of similarities. But in Islam, Allah is a nondescript creator being, neither male nor female. And the way to truly know God, Allah, is through the qualities of God. So what I'm going to invite you to do is a little bit long. It's going to probably take us all the way to the end of class. It's a little bit long. This, I think, what did we say, like 6 minutes or something? But it's a very beautiful opportunity to repeat the qualities with the song. So what I'm going to invite you to do is put your hand on your heart, take a deep breath. And as you're watching the song, when you see the word that describes a quality of God, I want you to say it out loud, wherever you are. They say that man is only able to absorb 99 names, that Muhammad was given 1,000, and that there's actually so many more names of God. These are the ones that we will be praying along with the song, to just repeat the words of God. It's a very beautiful practice. You can say it out loud, and as the song goes on, you can go from speaking out loud to whispering to saying it out loud. And so this is Sami Youssef. For those of you on the text group, I'll send it to you tomorrow.
راحي كريم عظيم عليم حليم حكيم متين منان رحمن فتاح غفار تواب رزاق رزاق شهيد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا مسلمين صلوا عليه اللهم صل على محمد وصح محمد يا مؤمنين صلوا عليه لطيف خبير سميع بصير جليل رقيب مجيب غفور شكور ودود قيوم رؤوف صبور مجيد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد يا مسلمين صلوا عليه اللهم صل على محمد وصح محمد يا مؤمنين صلوا عليه يا لطيف ألطف بنا يا لطيف ألطف بنا ألطف بنا
So I hope that you were able to hear that song and to enjoy it. It's so beautiful. I find it very touching to see the qualities of God and to see people speak them. I hope you were speaking them as well. I just now got all your messages that we were having some sound problems. And, you know, it's just exciting that we have all these different opportunities to try different things. And I'm so grateful to Rusty for allowing us to come to the studio. Remember, when we were at the beach, when we used to go to the beach, at the end of every gathering, I used to point to this beautiful construction that was in progress, and it turned out to be, I guess, a condo or something. And I said, you know, let's build that. Let's move into that. Let's make that happen. So someday, what I really hope that someday LMC Ministries will have a place where all of us can gather on a regular basis. That's our place. So we have a built-in studio, we have music, we have everything. But we need to build it. Let's build it. So guess what? It's a good time for me to bring up the donation basket. In order for you to get to this donation basket, you have to hit the contact button, or I think Rusty has a link there too. But I think if you hit the contact button, it'll take you directly, the blue contact button, it'll take you directly to the website, and the website has a donation button. If we build our own place, then so much more can occur than just Miracles with a Twist on a Thursday. So I haven't lost that vision, and I'm sure you haven't either, because we are a spiritual family. So let's build our LMC Interfaith Ministries ashram and make it happen. I'd like to end with a prayer from the Sufi tradition. And again, it goes along with our theme for today of awakening. Because Rumi was a 13th century poet. He was a whirling dervish. He was so filled with love and light. He would just go into a spin of ecstasy. And he would often talk about awakening. So I leave you with this. It's called Don't Go Back to Sleep. Don't hit the snooze button. The snooze button, don't forget, is your ego. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is open. Don't go back to sleep. And so we are awakening together on this path, and I'm so very humbled and happy and blessed to be on this path with you. So we'll keep in touch. I'll be back here next Thursday. God bless you. I love you.